Another terrific score. Thank you so much, Eric, for all the thought and the care that you put into your entry. Yeah, I mean, just it's this score and then the next score too. It's just such a great way to start off our new category, our next category of dotted brev entries, where the entire score is being evaluated and being presented by each participant. Okay, so we could kind of hear in there you changed around some things, and there's there are some things that don't quite work for me. And I'll tell you what they are. Some of it is things like changing the position of something that so it doesn't connect anymore, right? So I had actually talked about this, I believe, in the pitfalls. The way that certain things connected, like there's an implied leap here, da 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 ba dum, right? And when you drop this E walking up to A, when you drop it down so low, there is no longer a sense of connection between these 2 points. So what it's doing is it's taking away the sense of conflict. Like it just turns into a walk downhill, right? F sharp third, E third, D third, C sharp third, right? Shared by the second violins when you get past this next bar. So I don't really get that. I just get da 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 dum in the bass, right? And then things like this where you have this beautiful solo by oboe, doubled by first trumpet. Now it's in the middle of the oboe's register. If it had been an octave higher, then you would have had the sense in the score, which is so cool, of the this melody walking down and walking down and walking down. But by repeating it in the same register, we lose the effect of the gradual descension, right? And then here at the end, you end in E minor instead of ending in G, right? So the whole thing about this piece, and I noticed at the beginning as well, is that you also end in, like your first phrase ends in an E minor instead of in a G. So there's a bit of a misperception about this harmony, is that it's in E minor, and it seems like it might be in E minor, and so you might as well just go the whole way and add root E minor, like root E's to things and so on. But see, that would be a mistake because the E is the sixth of the G chord, right? It's a G6 chord with the E, the melodic note of the E providing like that kind of sense of nebulosity, right? So when you take that E and say, oh, that's the root because this must be this isn't a G6 chord, this is a 6/3 E minor chord, right? It's a 6/3 E minor triad. But that's not what happens, right? And at the end, it ends on a low G, right? It may look, this may be the voicing above G, B, and E, but that's just because the 18-year-old Barvinsky really thought that it was cool, that kind of that ambiguity, right? Of having the pitch of the sixth be in there, right? So here you've gone the whole way and turned it into minor, right? So they're just like little things like that don't work for me. But the overall scoring, though, that is very cool. And just like before, I'm going to be analyzing these scores backwards. So just everything, and unless there is a real reason to not do that, everything from this dotted brev and then the longa category are going to be analyzed with the E section first, and then jumping back to the D section, and then going back to the beginning and going E through C. All right. So I just figure that way, if I just go on and on about something, I might as well be going on and on about fresh material that the average viewer out there may have not heard that much about, right? Because I'm focusing, up to now, I've just been focusing on, A to A, and then A to B, A to C, and then recently I did some scores that were A to D, and I could just kind of tell as I got to the D section, just I mean, I think that I evaluated them well enough, but I just want to have my freshest energy applied to the later bits as much as possible. All right, does that make sense? Okay, if one thing I would say about this is that you really, really need to avoid piano style phrasing. Like, for instance, like this all being under one bow, right? So, like here you have repeated notes, right? What does that mean? Do you mean this to be sort of a soft legato or whatever? Or did this slur just get stuck over here because just because you transcribed it and dropped it in here and the slur was there already in the template? Maybe I should not have templates because too many artifacts are getting imported into scores that maybe people should think about it, and as they enter them manually, and like for instance here we've got another repeating note, this E here. So what does that mean? So yeah, so I mean, just think about it, and also think about the person bowing, right? Wouldn't it be better just to take this with separate bows? Up, down, up, or actually even could be down, up, and then a nice long down bow. Because if you start with the up, then pushing in with the crescendo is, or excuse me, if you start with the down, then pushing in with the crescendo on the up bow on the downbeat. There are all different kinds of reasons why something will get bowed a certain way by a player. So yeah, so just really watch out for things like that. Like for instance here, the original slurring from the piano part works really nicely, but yeah, I mean, but then like when you look at the other parts around it, is there a slur from here to there to keep the continuity going, or across these notes, or so anyway. All right, so kind of jumping back to here, I thought that this was nicely done. I would say that you should have destination dynamics on all these parts, right? So I'm just going to flip back to the leading to here, right? So you have this ya da 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 da, and non-decrescendo, right? Why are you putting diminuendo marks on this? Barvinsky says, hang on, you're saying non... Okay, all right. So, yeah, so non-decrescendo. So you're not supposed to diminuendo here, right? So, yeah, so just don't then the brass part shouldn't have that either. Okay, so, yeah, so don't let them, don't give that to them. All right, so, but anyways, one way or another, everybody softens down quite suddenly from E. So the instruments that are softening, how far are they softening? Where were they before, right? So you just really kind of need to tell them how far down they're going to go. So if everybody's going down to piano, maybe the brass could go down to pianissimo and so on. And then you could add piano to the end of these hairpins, right? And then mezzo forte, right? Starting off the new phrase. Yeah, there's just something about this. Just taking a closer look. Yeah, see, this is sort of driving me crazy. I don't know why, but like all of the note heads in this score are dark blue, and it's like, I don't know, it's like hurting my eyes. So if you could not do that again, it would be really great. I don't know. Maybe it was something that just happened when I opened it up or something. I don't know. But yeah, please don't make the notes dark blue. It's my aged eyes are having enough problems. Okay. All right. So this is rather nice. Like I like the like these octave Bs, and then the cello coming in here, kind of taking off that note from the bassoon. Right. It's just a very, very cool idea. And then the clarinet going up. So it's a very simple line. It isn't a bunch of trading off like I did in my score. And then here, I would say the only problem is that like there's a danger that this upper part here won't be backed off enough, right? So like you're starting off your melody instruments at the same dynamic level as this harmony above. So the real risk here is that this will just feel like a bass line, and it kind of does in the arrangement. But this is the melody, right? This is a lower melody. and it really is intended to be up farther into the sound picture. Right here, you've got this harmony spread way out, and it's sort of like by keeping this under it, like thinking, oh well, like I better not have too many cross voicings. I better not have this too high. By following that logic, you end up without that chesty sound, that sort of heartfelt, urgent sound of heartbreak, right? I mean, Barvinsky was feeling some deep things at 18 years old, right? So I don't think we should lessen that sense of that sense of heartbreak, that sense of longing. Now here, just all of these tenutos in a row. So what does tenuto mean? It means a very long bow, but I don't really feel long bows here as much as I feel maybe more like maybe portato, right? So ta ta and then bringing this up an octave, right? All right, and then this is all really cool in here. I really love the way that you went to sort of like a horns in here. What I would do here is like don't always assume that first and third are partners when you have a like leading into a chorale where you end up with four voices or whatever. I think that this should be first and second playing together, right? So starting off a duet and then like going to intervals here and so on. And then the other players come in because the partnership of first and second is the most intimate, most beautiful, and especially its soft dynamics in the middle range, right? As opposed to giving it to the third, who's like a kind of a more brash, more out there player, right? And then you've got your trombones at work and so on. It's just a beautiful combination of colors if you can get it to work. And then the pause, right? And then we go into this, da da dum, and you really are like adding a lot of voices to this. First, as opposed to just being like the single note that is all by itself, impossible solo. You've got the oboe and octave trumpets and doubling by the string. So it's going to be a very smooth sound rather than a very solitary sound, right? And then it's wise to bring in your trombones at pianissimo here. That's fine. Dynamic of this, is that supposed to be piano as well? I would definitely put it there. After like this break and the diminuendo and everything, just to make sure everybody is unified. And then once again, I have problems with the registers, right? So this line is supposed to walk down and continue walking down and continue walking down, right? But instead, yes, you started at the pitch it scored in the piano score plus an octave below to sort of keep that octave going. But then you repeat it in the flute at the same pitch, right? Instead of going further down, like maybe in another instrument. And then when it gets to here, it is in these octaves. And I mean, that's kind of a neat idea, but like I almost wonder what if the oboe were up an octave, right? And you just had like a single, what if you had just like a single, like oboe above, a single trumpet below, and then cut the viola and then have your violins do some doubling of those pitches and then become more, like maybe the first violin could stay up there, connect with the, but just like don't go down. So it's like it's sort of a mixture of things. It's the same register leading to the same register, leading to, so it just seems to me you interrupt the flow going down, and I think it is really an important thing that motion stay consistent across those last four bars. But the ending is really beautiful. That's a lovely chord. Now here at D, about my only concern, just like in terms of the overall approach, is that this will sound a little bit too much like what happened before. I'm just going to quickly page up here to C. Like right here, like, you got the restless pizzicato below, and the smooth heavy brass, and the strings on top. So this is really cool, and I'll talk about it in a little while. But then, like, you see how you sort of like add these upper parts. The flutes come in and so on, and then you're starting to get this right. And I feel that, like, maybe you feel this is leading into the next section, but with these higher clarinets and oboes and so on, I just feel that it too much. It kind of goes into this next part in here, and I don't feel that the texture is getting fresher. Do you know what I mean? It's like I feel like you give away some of what is going to be happening here. Now, as to this particular thing, like the cascading octaves, I think that you could have, dovetailed a little bit more on this. Okay, so for instance, like, just instead of going flute, 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 oboe, 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 I think you could have gone flute, 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 and oboe, 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 and then right here you could have gone oboe and clarinet, and then clarinet dipping down just one octave to help connect with the bassoon. Of course, it won't be on the same pitches, but it'll be, like, just sort of keep the cascade going. And, just see how much you could slur it. Like, you could slur this, you could slur from, let's say, if you did dovetail here, ooh, ooh, and so on. It's kind of hard to slur down, and octaves are kind of a bear, but it's still kind of worth it. It's not so hard for the flute player, but yeah. But just to have that kind of sense of smooth cascading. I think, like, part of the problem is, like, I see what you're doing here. Like, you're keeping that sort of cascading part, and the octaves and the bass and so on. You're keeping that mezzo forte, right? And you're keeping the melody and the harmony in the back, right? Just kind of more controlled. So, as to those elements, like, once again, I feel this first and second horn would do this way better, or would be more connected. I won't say that they would do it better. The third would be admirable. They'd be fantastic. But the thing is that the natural bond is between the first and the second in this kind of scoring. Softer, very carefully controlled, mid-range stuff where, like, that you really want the partner to the first to absolutely follow every possible little twitch of intonation. And, who's the person to do that? It's the second. Usually the second is the player who will be there the longest with the first, like, in an ideal situation. And the third might be somebody who is on their way to becoming first with another orchestra, right? So they won't have the same information that the second does. Now, having said that, there are some orchestras where where first, second, third, and fourth are there for, like, decades together, and then that is, like, really ideal because everybody knows everybody's slightest twitch. But then you have film orchestras where the players, like, they have to just manufacture that level of insight, just on the spot. Okay, now I find this really, really lovely how you're going, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Really nice division of bows and so on. But what are you doing here, my friend? This may have escaped your interest here, or your attention. Like, this doesn't, you're messing up your beautiful bowing scheme here by just leaving in that pianistic slur right in here, right? So just stomp out pianistic slurs wherever they occur. Yeah, and it's just kind of the same thing here. Like, these are good. I feel that these work really, really well. Da, da. It's just so much easier than da. And this one's okay, but, like, wouldn't you rather just have a nice firm articulation on the downbeat from all your players? Right? Even everybody playing soft, right? So piano sempre crescendo, how many people are doing this? Maybe you left it out on some parts. Like, the third horn isn't doing it? If you give a mezzo forte to the trumpet here, shouldn't we mark that everybody is mezzo forte by this point, just to be absolutely sure? And then this mezzo forte here, mezzo forte, there's no more crescendo until here, right? So how long does the sempre crescendo last? I would say that, like, once again, watch out for pianistic markings. Like, I think it would be better to say poco a poco crescendo and have an absolute destiny kind of a point, like where you're headed. And like, this is missing. We're also missing some information. We're missing the crescendo, right, and everything else in the strings. And will this get to a point where it's louder than the sort of tweedling that's going on around it? Right? And then here you're saying mezzo forte, forte, and then all suddenly you're fortissimo. So if you're bringing up your brass to mezzo forte here, and you've got this balance, that's kind of nice. But what are the strings doing? Right? See, so it maybe needed a little bit more proofreading. But just in terms of the scoring, it's very cool. I love this kind of warm scoring right in here, not too loud. You might not even need to get it up to, like, piano to mezzo forte. What if it were mezzo piano, right, to forte, right? And then when you got to fortissimo, it was pushing towards mezzo forte. Just right, kind of keeping the brass as a warmer color until you get to something bigger on the next page. Yeah, and I mean, this support is well taken, but the bassoonist could be trading off. Like, you could have more support helping out your, see, and like you're just going doink 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 in the different parts, right? And we're kind of losing the sense of the octaves. There's something kind of strange going on here too. You're going to a G natural. So if that was intentional, right, then against everybody else's sharps, like the G sharp here and so on, I would definitely put like a natural in parentheses, right? So that everybody really realizes this note really is intended to be kind of a slightly off note, sour note, whatever. But I suspect that this was originally intended to be an F sharp, so it's probably what it's just a slight, typo that ended up getting copy pasted. Now, in this next part of D, you got some beautiful scoring kind of starting. I'm just going to check something really quick here in the mix. Yeah, so it's just some strange stuff going on here. Maybe you made some adjustments or something like that, or maybe it was set like that to begin with. I don't know. Anyway, yeah. So like you can just tell that the bass for this part is just not. I mean, even though you have fortissimo marked in your trombone parts, it just really, the bass kind of feels weak here, doesn't it? And here you're sort of writing this this chord here. You're basically just hitting this E minor chord over and over and over again. But like in the mock-up, you certainly must have heard that there's a massive clash here. That's because right here is actually a D13th chord, right? So you're putting an E minor in this voicing against a D13, and there's also some other things that have been changed in that harmony. And yeah, so I mean, yeah, so there's just a big clash here. I mean, maybe you intended the clash, and then here you go to an E minor, but it's not an E minor as much. I mean, you could think of it as E minor over D, or actually, what it really is a G6 chord, right? We're coming back to our G6 chord, and then the root is like a D, so it's like it's like a 6/4 chord, right? With an added 6 of E. So yeah, so things get a little strange, I mean, and what's more, like, right in here, I think this is actually kind of like a, yeah, I mean, with the E minor is sort of clashing against the idea of the E7th, right? Or sorry, not the E7th, the like a C9 chord, sorry, A9 chord. So yeah, so the harmonic changes are a little weird in there, and then like here you're kind of writing this kind of E thing when the note, like it goes like the bass notes go like E a D D, right, and the D is setting up this the jump to this harmony in here, And so like it kind of doesn't work if you just stay on E. There's kind of no, it's just not leading forward into this, right? So watch out, all right? I feel it like it did some things to your scoring to not just work out that harmony. Okay, I just really kind of look to see what everybody's doing, and then you can strengthen it, and then your approach can be stronger. And I'm not quite so convinced by what's going on here in the strings, just sort of these E minor chords in the background. And this is one of the reasons why I feel it's kind of very weak right in here, right? It's like everything seems to be kind of a harmonized version of the melody, and then there's sort of this kind of almost like waltz type stuff happening, and the strings are doing almost nothing, right? So, and then the tuba is also. So it just really feels a little top heavy here. Yeah, but I can appreciate the sense of experimentation. Yeah, but aside from that, it's sort of like I feel it's kind of like half done, right? So like the top half is pretty well worked out, but then just the bottom half kind of sitting around on E's and E minor and so on and so forth. That's one of the reasons why it doesn't quite come together, right? Okay, so now let's get into like the big juicy part right in here. Precipitoso. Um, yeah, just so fun. Like all versions of this I've seen so far, even like kind of partial scoring, have just been really, really neat, very cool. Right. Now, I don't think that it's like enough to say non-legato. You have got to give us an articulation style. And what's more, you don't have to do this, right? So why are these gaps here in the middle staff of the of the accompaniment, right? So like just think like there are these big rock bottom octaves that the left hand hits and it jumps up and it plays this, right? So why are these things are in here to kind of give space to the melody because of the way that the hands are scored, but like you don't need to do that. You can just fill it in, right? So like this, just the I think getting establishing a sense of motion is more important than necessarily just like leaving in every rest, right? So like you could arc like this way and then you could arc like that, right? So just I think that the more continuity you have and the less like rests are just getting thrown in because they're in the piano score, the better. Now, if I would have one overall critique here, it's that you have this massive tutti and you're giving all the strength basically to the strings and winds, especially at first, right? And here, you have the first trumpet coming in, ba 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 bum. Okay, that's all great, but like without any kind of articulation style, like say staccato or accents or you know, and just only going up to a forte, I feel that it's kind of anticlimactic, right? Yeah, and you're setting yourself up for another problem, which we'll talk about later. But I do like the broader scoring in this of those repeated chords, chunk 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 chunk. The problem that you've got here is that like the motion across, like you set up these chords, so the middle strings here are going to be playing across this kind of vaster repeated chord, and the problem, the danger is that the individual motion, the up and down arcing and so on, just will get absorbed into the chords of the winds, right? So that is so this may not be enough, right? If you had more wind players, you could be doubling this. Like if you had bass clarinet, the bass clarinetist could be doubling what's going on in the cello. If you had English horn, the English horn player could be doubling what's going on in the violas and so on, right? So that's the some of those auxiliaries can just be used to double and thicken and so on and so forth. If you had contrabassoon, you could be doubling what's going on here in the basses really solidly and just leave the tuba up there an octave higher where it will be, it's nice and it does not need anybody doubling it, right? Or, bass trombone is sufficient. Okay, so for the problem, right? Basically the melody doesn't really have. We just have octaves here in the strings, and I just feel they need a little bit more weight, right? So they don't really get any significant doubling until C trumpet comes in here. And while this is very welcome, it's still not strong enough to really bolster what's going on in the violins. So if you had a third flute, say, then or if you had a third flute, the second and third could be playing this, and then the first could be doubling this, right? So they're just like, you just need a little bit more doubling in your strings, I think, to bring those parts out, because the way that they're scored now, they cannot really compete with what is going on with these, like the growing presence of the brass. And then when you get here, despite the fact that this is just so awesome, I mean, I love the way that you're giving more responsibility to the strings and the winds. But if you really intend everybody to be fortissimo, then the brass players will have to instinctively back off. But like, even with them backing off, with the way that it's scored, the fullness of their projection here will basically just swamp the winds. Even if they back off to forte, they will have a danger of swamping the winds right in here. Okay, so just there just needs to be a little bit more support on certain parts and a little bit more doubling to make it work out. Of course, like you might easily have flipped everything and had brass playing all of these repeated notes, right? But I think an articulation style is very important. So I think staccato, accenting some notes, and so on. Just like, I think that they're just this needs to be a little bit clearer, and it needs to be a little bit more precise and a little bit more pointy, and then like having the brass being kind of more solid and like just playing long held notes. I would want them to be a little bit further back, right? So yeah, I wouldn't bring them up more than forte, right? In this kind of a texture. It's cool the way that the trumpets are becoming, they're getting bigger and bigger, like in terms of like their support of the melody and so on. Yeah, I mean, that is definitely needed. And then here, bum, 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 bum. Really nice. And then, but this, if there were any place to just throw in an accent on every single note, it would be here. I don't know why there's a slur right here. Da 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 da. Right, with all these other instruments going chonk, 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 I think that you better just go chonk on everything. All right, and then I already talked a little bit about these chords kind of going forwards, which was very, very cool. So yeah, look, I'm really critiquing the hell out of this, Eric, but like it's, you didn't ask me to tell you that you were a genius, all right? You already know how much of a genius you are, or however elevated your thoughts are. You need me to give you feedback that will take the approach that you've got and make it even more solid and more playable and everything else, right? So that's all I'm trying to do. I don't want you to think that I'm here to cut you down at all. I think that you've got some very, very cool stuff happening in here. So it's just a question of how do we make it really, really, really work? In the limited amount of time that I have to really review your score and give you useful feedback. But yeah, so just like maybe there could be, rather than such kind of rigidity, like, and I apologize for the use of that word because it has like really kind of harmful notations, like really negative notations. But instead of like having a more rigid division between sections of different duties, like the giving the winds all of the repeated notes, giving the violas and cellos all the back and forth kind of triplet-y stuff, giving the upper strings and the trumpets all the melody and so on. Maybe there could be more interchangeable ideas, and I think it would make your scoring richer, right? Because like as it is now, you kind of listen to it in the mock-up, and there's something that feels a little weaker about it, and that's because the parts that are more emphatic, that have the most responsibility for the drama, are instruments that tend towards a gentler disposition, when everybody is fighting it out, right? So the brass end up doing things that are less essential, less dramatic, like just holding harmonies. A little bit of doubling of the melody. And the winds are just kind of going gangbusters on the repeated chords and so on and everything, and like they can't really push as hard out as the brass. So like I'm not saying that you have to score it this way, you have to score it that way, but maybe if there were more like some brass could help out some in some places, some winds could help out in other places with the melody and so on. If there could be more interchangeability of certain functions without kind of losing the overall vision, then I think that your score would be even more playable and more just kind of more coherent in a lot of places where things seem to start to fall apart a little bit or seem a little underpowered, right? Okay, so with that, let's jump back to the beginning of the piece and check out sections A through C. But once again, I just feel it was really enjoyable and one of the most original so far of interpretations of this section. Really scoring it out and thinking about all the things that go into it. So now back to the beginning. Okay, I really love the sense of distance that you have right at the start. I feel the only thing that spoils it is possibly the timpani. I almost feel like if you're going to throw in a roll here, what if the roll were like way down here? And here as well. What if you were to have like a really low E roll? I almost feel like, like we have just this beautiful sense of tranquility, and then you're throwing this in this, you know what I mean? It's just kind of like, I feel it's a level of tension that kind of doesn't quite jibe with this. Maybe an incredibly soft roll, an octave lower, might work. And then the same thing here. And then you can bring it up an octave for the other parts, right? Or even like, what if you were to get rid of timpani here and instead put in tremolo, an octave lower on double basses, just really, really soft, triple P or double P, right? Just really soft. But I really love the idea of just this beautiful, calm, soft trumpets and horns working together. The fly in the ointment for me though is I kind of feel ongoing misperception of the bass, right? Like when you go to E minor here, whether that's a misperception of the voicing of the G6 chord, and it's so easy to do. Like if you do an enclosure here, right, which you've got right here, you have your trumpets an octave lower than they are in the piano score, and then you have your horns the same place that that middle voice is, or the lower harmonization is. Then you create an enclosure. Then when you create an enclosure, you go away from the idea of the six, right? The octaves on top providing the six, like the six of D major being B, right? The note of B, and the six of G major, these being G thirds, being the E being the six of that harmony as well. So like when you create the enclosure, you basically create a minor triad with an octave on top, right? So like if when you have the stacking that Barvinsky has in the piano score, then that is like the more floaty kind of harmony, like the impressionist harmony, right? So like I feel that like when you go to E minor here, you're giving away this. Right? Barvinsky's piano score just floats and floats and floats, and it does not commit until it gets here, and then it's E minor. It's one of the reasons why I feel that this piece is mislabeled as prelude in E minor, right? It's that same kind of the person is looking at the first chord and thinking, oh well, that's a E minor 6/3 chord, and then they're looking at the end and saying, oh yeah, and then it ends in E minor. All right, this is E minor, and they don't look at they don't really look or listen to the piece, right? But I'm not saying that you have that sort of level of you're not willfully being ignoring these particular aspects, but maybe you got a little misled by some of the voicings. Or perhaps you just really wanted to commit to that E minor. But I would just point out to you that it really does give this away, right? All right, I really love the way you've got these dotted whole notes. These should all be dotted whole notes, right? And this should be a dotted whole note. The only reason why there were tied dotted half notes is for the context of the piano part, right? But it's not needed for any of these other instruments. They're not counting threes, right? They'll be counting the full 6/4, right? They don't need to know that this is 3 and that this is 3. They just need to know that it's a full bar of 6/4. Right? So their part can just be a dotted just a dotted whole note in all of these long ties. Okay, but just back to the actual scoring. This is so lovely right in here. Horns, trumpets, and then oboes and flutes on top. This is really, really nice. In this case, I would rather that this note were given to the oboe, but it's okay. But here you got this voice crossing, very weak, in the flute against the trumpet. But because everything is so incredibly soft, you kind of maybe will get away with it. But it's really it's not the greatest. And then going on, your flute and your oboe scoring right in here, and the clarinets and the bassoons and everything work beautifully. But the second clarinet is just really low right in here, and there's nothing about these brass parts that is going to be soft enough to save it, right? Because everybody is pianissimo up here. Here, you're bringing out your clarinets, and they will be quite prominent here, and maybe they'll kind of spoil the effect that you're going for, especially in octaves, right? And then in front of this brass and so on, there might be not really intonation problems, but just kind of problems of quality of tone that aren't the greatest. I mean, a lot of clarinetists hate to play in unison or in close proximity with trumpets. It drives them crazy because it occurs so often, especially in wind band scoring and so on, or concert band, I should say. Now, there's one little problem right in here. If you pay attention to your piano score, there are these little notes that kind of extend the tonality. In this case, a sounding G. So the little note of G is sort of held across, and then that is sort of answered by the note of C, which is kind of held across. So you've sort of done away with that, and you have everybody moving kind of in parallel, kind of going the same direction, the same way, and so on and so forth. So I just really felt the motion just felt a little obvious to me, just bum, 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 just everybody going and then going down, right? It wasn't that sort of, G, C, that voice below the middle voice, right? That just, I just felt would work possibly quite a bit better, right? But, it's we kind of get to, we kind of get to the more definitive direction. Do you see what I'm saying? It's you're really defining the harmony and really telling us what it is, instead of kind of being a little bit more misty and impressionistic and just saying, well, I'm not Barvinsky didn't tell you exactly what's going on there, so neither am I, right? So, yeah, but I mean, there's no question that what you've got here is pretty good scoring, except for scoring such low flute against. I mean, anytime you have trumpet sharing the same note as flutes, it doesn't matter if the trumpet is marked pianissimo. They're still the low flute is going to. It just might as well not be playing. The second oboe though will be fine. And so will your clarinets and so on. All right, but one thing that's absolutely for sure here is that you are definitely progressing the timbre here and telling us an emotional story, and that is just really the strong, one of the real strong elements of your scoring. I mean, yeah, there's some things in here that I could sort of pick apart, like every other score that does this, you're slurring over repeated notes. What does that mean, right? And then here you have this beautiful, like, you're not slurring across the downbeat. That's great. So why slur across the repeated notes? Why not slur here? Ta 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 ta. Right? Yeah, and then we just sort of have this little call and response game. Yeah, and the strings, the just the little bits and pieces of strings right in here. This is really nice. Yeah, and then once again, I feel this roll is too high. Right. Yeah, and then please no colors on the notes. Maybe I should add that to the checklist. Yeah, and this is going to be a very dense way to end the your prologue, right? So, do you want that much weight? I mean, it's nicely scored. I like the balance that you've got here. You should definitely give us a destination dynamic here at the end of the hairpin, right? What is it? Piano, pianissimo? How you're missing in a few parts here. Alrighty. Okay, so but I mean, other than those little nitpicks, a very cool opening, and once again, I really love the sense of distance. It just really does feel, and also sounds that way. I mean, not just to my eyes and my inner ear, but also in the mock-up, you can sort of hear that distance as well. It's just very nicely scored. All right, so here we're getting into the outpouring, the opening up. This is really nice here, a flute and oboe and octaves, and then you've got the kind of harmony playing in and around, with the like it's an enclosure, but since you're kind of hanging on the D here, it's not so bad. And then you go to the G, but like what is in the score, it still hangs on the D. You could just stay on the D, right? And then here, bum 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 bum. So what is going on in the bass here? In the original score, there is a C. There's an element of a C, but in the way that the patterns, left hand patterns, unwind, but the root is not a C, right? The root is a D, right? So like Barvinsky is just saying how long can he hang on D before he resolves the E, right? So like by giving us C's, it also kind of it's it kind of misleads us on the exact pathway that Barvinsky is using to get from here to there, and it also, like, in a way, kind of spoils the game. It sort of gives certain things away about the harmony. Just in my way of thinking, I know like people are trying to experiment with it, find new ways, give new context and things like that. But I felt that in this case, that I'm pretty sure that your approach is more along the lines of Barvinsky. I think you intend more to be true to the score, and so that's why I'm giving this kind of advice. Yeah, I just feel that being true to the score means being true to the bass line for your approach here. I would say don't chop and change so much with the slurring. Try to have like more unified slurring, the slurring that goes on for longer. Isn't so much in little bits and pieces like da ta da ta. It's better to go ta ta ta. Like it's better to have longer slurs with this kind of you're trying to get the real smoothness, capture the smoothness of the left hand. I think will be more effective, and connecting up bits like this, you're just kind of giving it more overall continuity. I mean, you're almost there with it. I would just say longer slurs, more connection between the parts when you have like stuff like this going on. And there is absolutely no reason why a lot of what the cello's doing here couldn't be played by violas divisi, right? And that would free the cello up to support some of what's going on in the bassoons and clarinets, right? And just give it more life and more smoothness. These rolls are pretty cool. Like on D's would be really amazing. And then D, 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 and then E, right? And then the low E I would go for. Yeah, but it's so cool the way you bring in the brass here, da 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 da. But why does it have to be da da? Especially with a trombone, which is actually not going to do that, right? This is just a piano slur. Same thing here. Can it be da 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 da? Same thing with the horns, right? And then once again, this should be first and second horn. And even here, da 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 dum, because then that sets them up to continue on ba 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 bum, and then this, yeah, yeah. No, I would just keep it first and second, and then when you get to here, maybe this could be second and that could be third. Yeah, yeah. I just really think it's really cool the way you bring in the brass and the horns and timpani right in here. So cool. Yeah. Yeah, I just really feel it's just wonderfully warm. This is a little strange though. Diminuendo. Why is this diminuendo and this crescendo? Yeah, so here we go to, yeah, I mean, it's just kind of strange the way this is all set up. I don't know. Does this need to be A2? So I mean, I understand the logic behind it. Like you want, like, you've got an entire section of double basses playing this, right, with a little bit of support from tubas and a little bit of trombone in there. Um, yeah, so I mean, I could, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, and then once again, this is just very chopped up in terms of your slurring. And I can see like you're trying to hold back on the strings, playing the kind of the smooth stuff, and you want the interrelationship between the clarinets and everything. But please don't go ta 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 ta. Right? Try to just go da ta. Right, with the slurring. It just seems a little fussy in all these parts. Yeah, you want beautiful swooping, and then when you get to here, you want the same exact thing. You want slurs that are nice and long and connect with each other, and it just sort of just feels like one long thing that is just progressing. Yeah, we'll just jump to that right now. So I think it's kind of cool the way you have this approach where the instead of dovetailing on a traded off note, you have like a really obvious overlap, right? So the last note of the bassoon is overlapping into the first note of the clarinet, which is starting on a higher pitch, right? And then you do the same thing. And then you do the same thing here with the clarinet holding on a little longer, or the flute comes in, and so on. So that's a cool, really valid. It works for me. I think it's a really original way to go. But I would just really make the slurs connect and just try to make it as smooth as possible. Yeah, yeah, and especially here, do you really want this? Ta 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 ta. Ooh, ooh, ooh. I mean, I don't think you're thinking out these slurs as much. This felt a little forced. Like, what is going on in the piano score? And then just a solo voice. Nothing else is happening. Right? But instead, like, I feel like you're guiding us too much. Like saying, like, hey, look at that. We are setting this up in the next page. Right? However, like, for all of that, the setup to the next thing is really, really great. So, I mean, like, I understand. Hang on, if I just get this to change to the next page. I understand the logic behind it and the way that it leads to this pizzicato thing. So like I don't mean to tease you about it or be mean about it or anything like that. One last thing is I really think you don't need to go a due here, a two here with these lines. Okay, I think that they can be. I think they could just be a single instrument. I think it's just more effective. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the scoring of the other parts. That's all really fun, and I really love the way that you work this line to kind of slowly rise through the parts at least in the strings. It'd be kind of nice if the oboe wasn't so high right off, like if this really could emerge and work its way upwards, like these kind of seem, they feel sort of like false starts. Do you know what I mean? Like like it ruins the upward pushing of the line if you are already up there, right? So like, with the strings rising higher and higher, what you end up with is like a lessening of intensity below as the strings rise up to join up with what's going on with the clarinet and the oboe, right? So like it's denser before and then less information afterwards. Whereas if everybody were to follow all the way up, then maybe doubling all the way up, a nice firm line that the ear could easily follow, nice prelude to this thing going on in here. All right. Yeah, but I mean, just, kind of nice, simple harmonic and thematic scoring right in here. Yeah, and here, I would just definitely, like, here, like, why isn't this in every part except for the melody? I just really, things need to back off and soften and just wisp away as the line and the winds rise and fall. Yeah, and then here, this could just stay on pianissimo as just one long note. It doesn't have to fade away. Yeah, and that's very, very cool. I mean, I would almost be tempted to bring down the horns to triple P right in here, just to really, just really be behind what's going on here. Yeah, and this was actually fairly nicely scored, except I just wasn't too keen on this part right in here, sort of pacing. Like this should be, I just feel this should be like kind of free and kind of wandering, and you don't know where it's headed, rather than kind of giving us a guide of like, okay, according to my harmonic calculations, it's headed this direction, right? Like that's one of the wonderful things about this sort of wandering line is just you kind of don't, where is it headed? We have no guide because of these rests in the other hand or in the rest of the orchestra. All right, and that leads us to this last part right in here. And after that, I promise I'll shut up. So yeah, so this was one of the coolest parts for me. I just kind of feel like we have like a similar situation, mezzo forte in the pattern, and then piano and so on in the other parts. I still feel it's like not enough. I would rather have everybody be the same dynamic, but it be balanced because of tone weight, right? So if there were, if you had more options in here, if you had some auxiliaries or something, maybe double bass, bass clarinet, contrabassoon, or third bassoon. You just would just have so many options, right? But I mean, I love the way that you start to build this up. It's just like, the danger I already talked about of like how D might not feel like such a surprise or such a contrast, right? But I really, I think this is cool the way, you're starting off with muted trumpet and trombones, and then, and then above we have you have your violins kind of playing the octaves again, right? And just what is this, right? Some piano style scoring or some piano style slurs, get rid of them, right? And just really, like next time you score something for somebody, just really, really finesse your scores, really like edit the hell out of them. All right, but it's just really better to go da da rather than da da. Like, where's the downbeat? There's like no articulation on it, right? And there's a difference in bowing between the two parts. So the concertmaster is going to just scratch this off anyways. So you might as well beat them to it. Yeah. So I feel it's a pretty good setup. I have a slight problem with the roll right in here. I think you're using rolls a little too much, right? To kind of as a dramatic tool, right? Just see like if you were to cut one of them, right? Maybe this one, right? Because we get it. We understand where we're heading, right? We know where we're going, so we kind of don't need the timpani to warm us up or cool us down. Yeah, mute. So I would just say, yeah, tell them to take their mutes off here rather than here. I usually just like say like, first chance I get any kind of change that's coming up, I just mention it right at the end of the passage. But yeah, but of course, that is also the place to put it. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, that's about all I had to say about this. I mean, there are a few other like intricacies that we could go into. How much these flutes work in the context with the strings. I actually feel that they work pretty well. Stuff like that. And then like the some of the horn scoring might need a little bit of work. I'm not sure if this is first horn going to first and second. There are little bits and pieces like that. But altogether, it's just a really, really fun, really satisfying score to look at, and just I really got a lot out of it, and huge enjoyment. And it's really standing up well at the beginning here with all of these new dotted brev entries. So it just remains for me, halfway through your entry, to thank you so much, Eric, for supporting the channel and for working so hard on this, and and being such a strong part of this whole process, and for helping me support some musicians who are in real trouble right now. And and I'm sure that what we have donated to them is already helping somebody or several people, who knows. It's probably a drop in the bucket, but at least we did something right for them, and I hope they're okay over there. And thanks out there to all my supporters over the past few months that have also contributed and been part of this. And even if you haven't, but have just been watching from the sidelines and maybe thinking of doing it next year, or you're never going to have the time, maybe, or you just really enjoy it, thank you all the same. Thanks to all my website subscribers, and to everybody else out there who's just viewing it for the hell of it. And you know what to do, right? Eric has entered this challenge because he wants to improve his scoring and hear what everybody else has to say, and he has given other people some advice too. So please return the favor. This is the time to do it and to help him out with any insights or just plain compliments. If there's something in particular that you really liked about this, that really moved you, that really made sense to you, tell him about it. All right, because that's the way we get stronger, is by understanding what moves other people. So with that, I will just sign off now, and just really, I'm having a huge amount of fun. It's kind of turning into a marathon as we get towards the last few weeks of this year, and I'm enjoying every minute of it. So I'll see you soon with another awesome entry.